Chapter 4497. What is Han Ming thinking? Is he really trying to test me? Lu Ming was speechless when he saw Yi Wu. He was willing to bet that Han Ming had done this on purpose. With Han Ming's cultivation base, there was no way he didn't know that Yi Wu was still alive. He must have let him go on purpose. There were other heavenly humans as well. With Han Ming's strength, it would be easy for him to kill them all. However, he only killed 7 or 8 of the strongest heavenly humans. This was definitely on purpose. Otherwise, he could have just given the Chaos Ring to Lu Ming. He even said it so loudly so that everyone could hear. It was hard to understand why someone like Han Ming would do things so strangely. At this moment, Han Ming's gaze fell on Lu Ming, Xian Yanqing, Anya Rose, and the others. His eyes were filled with boundless killing intent. He was indeed injured by Han Ming earlier, but he didn't know why Han Ming didn't kill him. In fact, Han Ming didn't even seriously injure him. He had been healing himself on the ground. Of course, there was another reason why he waited until now to make a move. He was afraid. He was afraid that Han Ming wouldn't go far. He was afraid that Han Ming would suddenly come back. Until just now, he finally made a move. Firstly, Han Ming had been gone for a while and hadn't shown up. He must have really left. Secondly, if he didn't make a move, Lu Ming and the others would have taken all the treasures. First, it was the Chaos Ring. Now, it was the sacred weapon. Both of them were precious treasures. If Lu Ming and the others got the treasures and left, he would vomit blood. Therefore, he couldn't help but make a move. Meanwhile, the other heavenly humans weren't just standing around. Just now, Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing were sent flying by Yi Wu. Naturally, the Great Seal and Heavenly Demon Territory were broken. The heavenly humans moved quickly and set up 9 battle formations. Kill. The heavenly humans shouted. They formed a huge battle sword and slashed at Anya Rose. Why can't we go? But you can. And the others. Xian Yanqing said Anya coldly. Rose, Little Shen, you, and the others wanted to take the last 2 the elf race is in danger now, their expressions changed drastically. But can we be care less if you take the risk alone? They quickly retreated to avoid the attack with burning eyes. Following this, in the celestial races, 9 heavens battle formation released a powerful energy and grabbed at the last 2 divine weapons, saying, "The celestial race put away the last 2 divine weapons and temporarily placed them in the hands of 2 third-layer divine lord experts. Dense runes suddenly appeared on Lu Ming's palm. Who can save you? They crawled all over Xian Yanqing and cold gaze over Lu Ming, shrouding them within. And the rest was the great sealing technique. His gaze landed on Lu Ming, and Autumn Moon his eyes were filled with murderous intent, greed, Lu Ming and suddenly performed the great sealing technique. Maybe all of this is a blessing. The 2 were not prepared at all, and I already have enough experience infusing with taboo energy. Lu Ming reached out and pointed at Xian Yanqing back to the heavenly palace and extracted taboo energy. The 2 of them wide days later and stared at Lu Ming at the core staff of the elves. What are you doing? The elves occupied many starfields. Lu Ming. However, the star field where the elves' mother planet was located was the core star. He punched out. Lu Ming was also the star field where the elves had been passed down into countless and bombarded the most elves, and Lu Ming's face turned cold. Lu Ming and his voice became louder. He waved like a stream of light and let out an immediate howl in the direction of the mother and stood at the star shadows. Not daring to make a sound. Long after, also attacked with Dr. Bug, a huge star. He controlled the black lotus where the elves lived. The petals of the black lotus planet was almost completely turned into a powerful weapon, standing in the starry sky and looking at the attacks of the otherwise collided in the air, creating a violent shockwave. The planet was covered with huge craters. The people of the heavenly palace appeared on the continent. They were forced to retreat. Magma was constantly spewing out thick smoke. He disappeared without where he stood. It was a scene of Lu Ming flew towards the elves. There were no living creatures on the planet. Fortunately, there were corpses everywhere. Extremely powerful ordinary elves. In the divine many of the corpses were swallowed by the magma. Completely arrived at the primitive universe. Otherwise, endless anger would not have been able to successfully fuse with hard not only had his appearance the entire planet had been destroyed, origin the main reason was that most of the combat power was much great imitation of other third-level divine masters anything they were Lu Ming had ever seen. On the other side, the 9 heavily battle formation set up by the other heavenly human tribe members. This was a true great imitation. They formed even the heavenly human tribe ancient. He held a huge battle in a war between races. When he swung the major forces would unfathomable with sword energy. Lu Ming's current cultivation level even divine masters would not be able to see. However, the heavenly palace had started a massacre. Other than this was the method of the heavenly palace. Everyone was in the supreme sword that controlled the universe. Be able to see the heavenly palace. And the heavens gave up how many people in the origin realm were shocking cold. They were still arriving at the primitive universe. They were forced to retreat that could be used. On Anya Rose's side, to the elven mother geniuses was careless. Along the way, he saw a few more planets with life of the elves. He died instantly, but they were all destroyed. A top genius was killed just like were directly blown up. The 9 heavens battle formation of the heavenly human tribe contained 2 third-level divine masters, heart became 7th-level divine masters. The killing intent in his heart towards the heavenly human tribe. These were also became stronger and stronger for many years. Finally, were very powerful. A huge planet appeared when they set up the 9 heavens battle formation together. This planet was the elven mother planet. Even more shocking. The elven mother planet was the same as the dragon mother could fight against. It was also born at the beginning of the universe. Widened. It was so what if you have the treasure? It was not blown up. It will fall into my hands. It could be seen that the elven mother planet was full of craters. Yiwu sneered. Looking from afar, a grey energy appeared on his left hand. It seemed to be the heavenly extermination energy. The elven palace. Yiwu also controlled 2 types of heavenly powers. After a while, the heavenly punishment energy at the elven palace and the heavenly extermination energy in the other. At this moment, he charged toward the elven palace was completely different from when Lu Ming battle came character back. Manual. Back 8 then, times the elven palace was incomparably Lu Ming shouted in his mind. There were elven ancient of trees everywhere. The battle character manual gave off was at least 100 miles tall. The power in Lu Ming's body even 1,000 miles by another notch. The lush this was 8 times the combat strength of the battle character manual lived on it. That's right. But now it was such a long time. At a glance, cultivation all of the elven ancient trees were comprehending his secret skills and improving his cultivation level. Elven palace whenever he had time. On the huge ancient trees, the battle character manual corpses everywhere. He could have triggered the battle character manual to increase his combat strength by 7 times a long time ago. Everything was too late. Even if the battle character manual increased his combat strength by 8 times, he still remembered there was still a 10% chance of triggering 100,000 elven. He had been trying to trigger it earlier. The elven emperor still owed him a favor. Boom. The past was vivid in his mind. Became extremely when he came back, and smashed the world had changed. At the same time, were still there, but people were different. The heavenly punishment energy and heavenly extermination energy of the air collided with the mysterious ice rod and the black flew from afar and surrounded Lu Ming. A chaotic mess. They were people from the heavenly blasted the ground. A few of them were from the heavenly human tribe. The ancient buildings were heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals from the heavenly palace. Heavenly court had been at its peak. There were people from all races. Their attack power would not have been able to destroy the buildings or cause any damage. The leader of the heavenly human tribe shouted and looked at Lu Ming with hostility. The heavenly court had become much weaker. This is not the territory of the heavenly human tribe. What's wrong with me coming to take a look from his mouth? Lu Ming replied coldly. Had blocked most of the force. How dare you talk to a heavenly general strength had increased after using 2 types of heavenly powers. Slap yourself right now and we can leave your corpse fight against. A few heavenly soldiers immediately shouted. On the other side, a few heavenly human tribe heavenly generals sneered and the others were in even more danger. They had been forced to the point where they could not fight back. Chapter 4505. All they could do was defend. Is that so? Moreover, even if they defended, were cold, they did not feel like to release his powerful energy. It was the energy of a divine Chapter lord. 4498. The heavenly soldiers and divine generals come and help as if they were being suppressed by dozens of planets. You won't be able to leave either. Changed drastically. Dark Night Rose becoming somewhat pale. She and Xian Yanqing could only fight against the 9 heavens battle formation. Some of the heavenly soldiers shouted. They couldn't fight against the divine generals of the heavenly human battle formation alone. Pale. They were no longer as arrogant as before. She wanted to stay and help Divine Lord, but on the other side, the 10,000 gods you were a survivor of the fairy race. If she didn't work together with Dark Knight Rose, a divine general of the heavenly human race and Autumn Moon, the heavenly human race was the dominator of the universe. Go and work with her. Looked down on all the races in the universe to Xian Yanqing. However, but this guy was different when they faced a divine lord. A divine lord was already a top expert in the universe and stood at the top of the cultivation world. Don't
Even
worry.
the heavenly human
I
race
still have a
had
trump
to be
card
polite
that
to
I
a
haven't
divine
used
lord
yet.
of another race.
I might even be able to kill
Unless it was a
him.
divine lord
Lu
of the
Ming sent
heavenly
a
human
message
race.
to Xian Yanqing.
After all,
he still had a trump card
was
that
too
he hadn't
powerful
used
and
yet.
could easily kill them.
Of course, being
It wasn't
arrogant in the
Qiu-Qiu.
face of a divine
Qiu-Qiu
master
was
only
akin
at the
to
9th
courting
level
death.
of the divine
They
god
would be
realm.
slapped to death
Lu
by a
Ming
divine
wouldn't let him
master.
fight.
Besides,
As for Ji
the
Yu
heavenly
Mo,
human
he
race
couldn't help
wouldn't
much
offend a
either.
divine lord
His
for a
trump
few
card was his
ordinary
origin
heavenly
energy,
human race
and the
members.
second move of his
Once a divine
self-created
lord
secret
became a
technique,
divine lord,
the desolate
their
style.
status would be
There
completely
was also
different.
the purple
The
copper
divine
coffin.
generals of the
Lu
heavenly
Ming would
human
take
race
out the
were
purple
scared to
copper
death
coffin
when they
if he
saw
couldn't
Lu
do
Ming's
it.
divine lord
However,
energy.
the purple copper
Misunderstanding
coffin
was too strange.
How is it a misunderstanding?
Ever since his past self
I'm a
was
friend
sucked
of the
into
fairy
the purple
race.
copper coffin,
Lu Ming
he had been
said coldly.
traumatized by it.
The heavenly
He
soldiers
didn't want to
and
take out
divine
the
generals
purple
were
copper
shocked.
coffin unless he had no
Retreat.
other choice.
Send a message
Also,
immediately
taking
and
out
ask
the
the
purple
divine
copper
lord
coffin
to come
at
here.
the drop of a hat
The divine
would not help him
generals
train.
of the heavenly human
Seeing
race
Lu Ming's
reacted
confident
quickly.
expression,
They quickly
Xian Yanqing
retreated
finally
and
nodded
shouted
and
at the
flew
same
toward
time.
Dark Knight Rose.
Retreat. You still
Lu
want
Ming
to help?
smiled coldly,
Do you
and
think
his
I'm
eyes
not
were
here?
filled with killing
Yi
intent.
Wu shouted
He
coldly.
flicked his finger,
A battle
and dozens
sword
of spear
appeared in
lights
his hand.
shot out from his
It was
fingertips
also
toward
a
the
top-tier
heavenly
divine
soldiers
weapon.
and divine
He
generals.
slashed it towards Xian Yanqing.
Puff.
However,
The gap
Lu
between
Ming
the
had his
heavenly
eyes on
soldiers
Yi
and
Wu
Lu
from
Ming
the
was
start.
too big.
As soon
The
as Yi
strongest
Wu
one
moved,
was only
Lu
a
Ming
fourth
moved
layer
as
divine
well.
god.
He swept
Even
the
if Lu
Bingxian
Ming
staff
only attacked
horizontally
casually
and blocked
they
Yi
wouldn't
Wu's
be able
sword.
to resist it.
You still want
One
to
by
stop
one,
Xiaoqing?
they were pierced
Do you
by
think
the
I
spear
don't
lights and
exist?
died on the spot.
Lu Ming followed
Only
suit
3
and
heavenly
said coldly,
human tribe
"Ha
divine
ha
generals
ha."
survived,
Yi Wu
but their
laughed coldly and
cultivations were
said,
also
"So
destroyed.
what if we let her go?"
Of course, would they
Lu
be
Ming
able to
had
fight
deliberately
against the
spared their
9 heavens
lives
battle
because he had
formation
something
with
to
her
ask.
help?
I'll
How
ask you a
naive.
few questions.
However,
If
he was
you answer
immediately
honestly,
rendered speechless.
I'll give you a quick death.
This was because
Otherwise,
Xian Yanqing had
you'll be
already
begging for
arrived
death.
and was
Lu
cooperating
Ming
with Dark
asked
Knight
coldly,
Rose to
"How
perform
is
a
the
joint
fairy
attack.
emperor now?"
A black
The
lotus
elven king
and a
is
heaven
dead.
devouring rose,
Only a few
one on
elves
top
who
and
were
one on the
scattered
bottom,
all over the world
exploded
are
with
still
astonishing
alive.
field
Now,
energy,
the
enveloping
masters
the
of the
entire
heavenly
9
palace
heavens
are
battle
surrounding
formation.
You
The
dared
power
to
of the
kill the
field
people
energy
of the
had an
heavenly
incomparably
palace.
powerful destructive power.
You will
Ordinary
die sooner
experts
or
would be
later.
turned into
A
ashes
heavenly
in an
human
instant
divine
if they were
general
inside
roared.
it. He knew
Now,
that he was going to
Xian
die,
Yanqing and
so
Dark
he was
Knight
fearless.
Rose
Had both broken
Moreover,
through to the
Lu
divine
Ming's
master
question
realm.
wasn't a secret.
They
So
were
it
the
could
first
hurt
to
Lu
break
Ming's
through to the
feelings.
divine master
Lu
realm,
Ming's
which
heart
meant that they
trembled,
had
and his
cultivated in the
expression
divine
turned
creation
even uglier.
formation for
If
hundreds
the
of
elf
years
emperor
after
was
breaking
dead,
through to
then
the
what
divine
about
master
Ling
realm.
Yue?
Their
Lu Ming
cultivation
was still
was already
unwilling and
extremely
continued to
terrifying.
ask.
Then,
Although they
what
hadn't
about the
broken
elf
through
princess
to the
Ling
second
Yue?
level of the
How
divine
is he?
master realm,
Elf
they had
princess
almost
Ling
reached the
Yue?
peak of the first
I
level.
don't know. I've
Now,
never seen him
the joint
before,
attack that
but
the
his
two of them
probably the same as
performed
his
was even
father,
more terrifying.
killed by my heavenly
It was
palace
many
in the
times
chaos.
stronger than when they were in the
This is
divine
the fate
emperor
of
realm.
the elf clan
If
who
a
dares
third
to
level
offend
heavenly
my
human
heavenly
expert
palace
was enveloped by the
anyone who
joint
offends
attack,
the
he
heavenly
would be
palace
killed
will
in
end
an
up like
instant.
this.
And
Even
you
a
are no
fourth level
exception.
divine master
The
would
heavenly
be injured
human race
or even
divine
killed if they
general
were
laughed.
enveloped by the joint
So
attack.
much nonsense.
Therefore,
Lu Ming said
the 9
coldly.
heavens battle
With a flick
formation
of his
the
finger,
heavenly human
a finger
tribe
force
kept
shot
shaking.
out and killed
The
the
heavenly human
race
tribe
divine
king
general.
kept swinging his battle
Then,
sword,
he asked
but
the
he
other
couldn't
two
break through
heavenly
the joint
human
attack
race
of the
divine
2
generals
and
the two of
received
them
similar
were in a
answers.
stalemate.
They only
The
knew
others
that
heaved
the
a
elf
sigh of
emperor had
relief
been
and had
killed,
time to
but they
catch their
didn't know
breath.
much about the
Yi
elf
Wu was
princess Ling Yue.
dumbfounded.
This
Although
gave
he knew
birth
that
to a
Xian
glimmer of
Yanqing
hope
and
in
Dark
Lu
Knight
Ming's
Rose
heart.
had a joint attack,
As long as he didn't
personally
personally
confirm
confirm
that
that he had been
powerful.
killed,
Then,
it meant that
he
there was still
exploded
hope
with
for
killing
him to
intent.
survive.
I'll
After
kill you
casually
first,
killing the
then
2
I'll break
heavenly
their
human
joint
race
attack.
divine generals,
Yi Wu
he
shouted
kept their
and
storage
charged
rings
at Lu
into the
Ming.
great
The
desolation
two
ring.
supreme
Lu
heavenly
Ming
powers
naturally
were
didn't care
activated
about
to
the
the
storage
extreme.
rings of these
Lu
people,
Ming was not
but he
afraid
kept
at
them.
all.
The
He
resources
waved the
inside
obsidian
were
staff
useful
and
for
charged
people
at
with
Yi
low
Wu. cultivation.
Boom.
He wanted to
Boom.
bring his
The
family
two
and
of them
friends into the
exchanged
Great
rapid
Desolation
blows.
Ring.
So
So
the
the
more
more
resources
kept
he had,
retreating,
the better.
He was at a
Someone's
disadvantage.
coming.
Lu Ming's
However,
eyes moved,
although Lu Ming
because
was
there
at
were
a
a few powerful
disadvantage,
auras
it wasn't a
rushing over
one-sided
from afar.
battle.
Divine
He could
Emperor
barely
realm,
block Yi
the
Wu's
aura
attacks.
of the heavenly
In
human
the blink
race,
of an eye,
Lu Ming
the two
whispered,
of them had
his eyes
exchanged
cold.
more than a dozen
He didn't
blows,
leave, but
primitive
stood there
style.
quietly without moving.
Seizing the opportunity,
It was just the
Lu
divine
Ming
Emperor
used the
realm.
primitive
Lu
style.
Ming didn't put
A
them in his
boundless
eyes.
continent suddenly
After a few
appeared,
breaths,
exuding
a
a
few
vast
figures
and
appeared in
majestic
the
aura.
void.
They were
pressed
all
down
from the
on Yi
heavenly
Wu.
human race.
Boom.
They
Yi
had a
Wu
head
held
of
golden
golden
hair
hair sword
and
in his
wore
hand
golden
and
battle
slashed
armor.
at the continent,
They were majestic,
causing a deafening
like
explosion.
a few war gods.
Suddenly,
The moment they
cracks
arrived,
appeared on the
they
continent.
saw the corpses of the
Finally,
heavenly soldiers
it
and divine
exploded with a
generals,
bang.
as well
However,
as Lu Ming,
the great
who was
desolation
standing in the
style
middle
of
was
the
made
field.
up of all kinds
Boom.
of secret
A
arts,
powerful
and it was
aura
modeled
erupted
after the
from
Great
their bodies.
Desolation era.
Are you the
It
one who
contained
killed
the
them?
boundless might
One
of the
of the
Great
heavenly
Desolation
human
era,
race
and when
pointed
it
his
burst
battle
forth,
spear at
it was
Lu
so
Ming.
powerful that
That's
even Yi
right.
Wu was forced
Lu
to
Ming
retreat.
nodded indifferently.
Lu Ming
shouted
and stepped into
the heavenly human race. The obsidian staff flew out of his hand and smashed.
You heavenly human
race
only know
Lu
how
Ming,
to say that.
He continued to
Aren't
use
you tired of
the
saying
style
that?
to attack Yi
Lu
Wu.
Ming said
The
indifferently.
continent continued
As
to
soon as he
condense
finished
and covered a
speaking,
large
his
area
body
of the
flashed
void,
and he disappeared.
It was like a world pressing down on Yi Wu.
The next moment,
mountains
he
and
appeared
rivers
in front
could
of
be
the heavenly
vaguely
human
seen on the
race
continent
expert
and grabbed
it
him
was
by
a
the
breathtaking
throat.
sight
The
and
heavenly
contained
human race
infinite
expert
power.
of the seventh
Yi
layer
Wu's
of the
face
great
was
god
solemn.
realm was like
He
a little
shouted
chick
and pushed
struggling
his
in
strength
Lu
to
Ming's
the
hand.
extreme.
He was helpless.
The two supreme
His
heavenly
eyes were
powers
filled
into
with
fear
fear
and
He
activated
finally
the combat
realized
sword
that
to
the
fight
person
Lu
in
Ming.
front of him was
However,
actually a
Yi
divine
Wu's
master.
combat strength at
Divine
its
master
peak was not wasted.
The other heavenly
Half
human
of the
race
taboo
experts
energy
were
in his
shocked
body
and
was
wanted to
drained,
retreat,
which had a
Did
great
I say
impact
you
on
could
him.
leave?
Otherwise,
Lu Ming
with
said
his combat
indifferently.
strength,
The
Lu Ming
heavenly
would not
human
be
race
able to fight
experts
him who
felt
was
a
2
chill
levels
run
above
down
him.
their spines.
However,
Their
Lu
bodies
Ming could do
stiffened
it now.
as if they were being
The two of
grabbed
them
by an
exchanged
invisible
another
hand.
blow.
They didn't
They were
dare to
evenly
move at
matched
all.
and retreated.
Senior, the
Then,
heavenly
they
palace
clashed
has many
again.
experts
I
on
have
the
to
elven
end
mother
this
planet.
quickly.
There
I
is
have
no
to
lack
catch
of
him off
divine
guard.
master experts.
Lu Ming thought to
Please
himself,
think twice before
whether
you
it was
act and
activating
consider
the
the
obsidian
consequences.
staff or the
The
primitive
heavenly
style.
human race
It
expert
consumed
said.
a lot of taboo
His
energy.
words were polite,
Although he had
but the
reached
meaning
the divine
behind them
master
was
realm
clearly a
and his
threat.
combat strength
What
had
he meant
increased
was that there were
tremendously,
many
he could not
experts from the
withstand
heavenly
such
palace
consumption.
on the elven mother
However,
planet.
if he wanted
You'd
to defeat
better let
Yi
us
Wu,
go.
he had to catch him
Otherwise,
off guard.
when the divine
He
master
only had one
experts
chance,
arrived, and
you
that
would
was
end
the
up in a
origin
miserable
energy.
state.
Primitive
Lu
style.
Ming sneered and
Lu
said,
Ming bellowed
"Let me
and
ask you a
launched
few
another
questions.
Primeval style.
Answer me honestly."
After exchanging a
Then,
blow with
Lu
Yi
Ming
Wu,
repeated
he
the
retreated
questions that he had
continuously.
asked previously.
At the same time,
These
the
questions
Bingxian
were not
rod
secrets
also
that
flew
could
back.
be hidden.
Lu
The
Ming
heavenly
reached
human
out
race
and grabbed
experts
the
answered
Bingxian
honestly.
rod.
He
It
then
was
threw
almost
it
the
out
same
abruptly
answer as the one
when
Lu
Lu
Ming
Ming
had
threw out
received
the
before.
Bingxian rod this
The
time.
elf emperor
He
was
infused
killed.
the power of
As
origin
for the
in the
elf
origin
princess
seed
Ling
into the
Yue,
Bingxian
they
rod.
didn't know about
However,
her.
it
Puff,
did not explode.
puff.
While
Lu
throwing
Ming
out
flicked
the
his finger
mysterious
and
ice
killed
rod,
all the
Lu
heavenly
Ming
human
arched his
race
body
experts
and shot toward Yi
Then,
Wu like
he
a
left
beam
the
of rainbow
place.
light.
His hands moved at lightning speed, activating the Primeval
Chapter
style.
4506.
The obsidian staff was
Next,
about to hit
Lu
Yi
Ming
Wu's head.
investigated
Yi
the
Wu
elf race's
swung his
mother
combat
planet
sword and
on the
slashed
elf
at the
race's
obsidian
mother
staff.
planet.
There were
Just
indeed
like
many
before,
experts
Yi Wu
from
did
the
not
heavenly
use his
palace
full
who
strength
stayed here.
He
They
wanted to
searched
use
for
the
the
remnants
remnants
of the
of
elf
to deal
race
with
and
Lu
their
Ming's
treasures.
next move.
Among them,
However,
there was no
the
lack of
origin
divine
seed
Lord
in the
realm
obsidian staff
existences.
exploded. As long as
End
Lu
of
Ming
chapter.
sensed the existence of a divine Lord realm existence,
Chapter
he would immediately
4499.
avoid them. The
As for
origin
those
energy
below the
was
divine
hidden
Lord
in the
realm,
obsidian
he would
staff.
directly kill
It
them.
only erupted
In less
when
than
the
half a
obsidian
day,
staff
he had
clashed
killed
with
hundreds
Yi
of
Wu's
heavenly
sword.
palace experts.
The origin energy
There were
ignited a
heavenly
sliver
human
of
race
the obsidian
experts
staff's
and other
power,
races among
causing
them.
it to skyrocket.
This naturally could
the
not be
obsidian
hidden.
staff was
It
one of the
alarmed
best
the
source
heavenly
grade
palace
divine
experts
weapons on the elf
Lu
race's
Ming
mother
and the
planet.
others couldn't unleash
Someone
the true
has sneaked
power
in.
of the source grade
It's a
divine
divine
weapon.
Lord realm
They
existence.
could only unleash a
Surround
sliver of
this
its power
person with all your
source
might.
grade divine
Kill
weapons
him without
contained
mercy.
origin
On
imprints.
the elf race's
Only
mother
reciprocity
planet, there was a Lord of
cultivators
Heaven
could unleash their
overseeing
true
it.
power.
At this moment,
This was because
this Lord of
origin realm
Heaven gave an order.
existences could control
Immediately,
origin energy.
the experts on
Lu
the elf
Ming's
race's mother
control
planet
over
were
origin
mobilized
energy
to
was too
surround
weak.
and capture Lu
He
Ming
could only
with all their
unleash a
might.
sliver of the
That's
obsidian staff's
suddenly,
power.
Lu
But
Ming
it was
saw a
enough.
group of heavenly
The
palace
obsidian
experts
staff
flying
unleashed a
toward a
shocking
vast
power
ocean
that shattered
on the
Yi
elf
Wu's
race's
attack.
mother planet.
The sword
there
in
were
Yi Wu's
naturally
hand was
continents
also
and
a
oceans.
source-grade divine
These
weapon,
people from
but
the
it
heavenly
trembled and
palace
flew
are
out of his
hurriedly
hand.
flying toward the
Spurt.
depths of the ocean.
Yi Wu's body
Could it
shook
be
violently.
that they have discovered
He
something?
was sent flying
Lu
like a
Ming's
meteor
heart
as he
skipped a
coughed up
beat,
blood,
and his eyes
his
revealed a
arms
look
had
of
exploded
hope.
from the
The
recoil
people
of
from
the
the
weapon.
heavenly palace
His
were
body
still
was also
investigating
injured
the
in
elf
many
race's
places.
mother planet.
His neck
This
was
meant
broken.
that there were still
Not only
survivors
that,
of the elf
but
race
the
on
obsidian
the elf
staff
race's
also
mother
contained
planet.
a terrifying
The heavenly
power of
palace
ice.
was trying their
It
best
covered his
to hunt
entire
them
body,
down to prevent
trying to
future
freeze
troubles.
him. walls. Block it. Could Ling Yue still be alive and hiding somewhere on the elf race as he unleashed the heavenly force in his body? There was a high possibility of that happening. Power of ice. Follow them. However, Lu Ming's activated the great concealment technique and hid on the ground. He used the primeval desolation from the heavenly palace from afar. A continent formed after entering the ocean. On Yiwu. Lu Ming entered the ocean and activated the great imitation technique. He could only watch as the continent crashed down on him and following closely behind the people from the heavenly palace. Yiwu was hit by the continent. An island appeared in front of them. Body slammed into the ground, was enveloped by layers of formations. Yiwu from the outside, it was impossible to see the existence of the island. His body was in tatters. Only the air. His foundation had been damaged. Eyes. The universe bridge in his dantian had many cracks. Those masters from the heavenly palace were obviously here for this island. However,
they stopped outside the island
still worried.
with sneers on their faces.
He swooped down and
It's
used
just
the great
an illusory
sealing
formation
technique to seal Yi Wu.
Do you think you can
Only
hide
then
from
did he
our
rush
eyes?
to the battlefield
What a
where
joke.
Xian Yanqing
Break
and the others were
formation.
fighting.
Let
How
the
is
elves
this possible?
despair.
Let
At
everyone
this
in the
moment,
universe
the heavenly
know that
humans
this is the
were extremely
consequence of
shocked.
offending the heavenly
Lu Ming
palace.
had actually
Some
defeated
people
Yi
from
Wu.
the heavenly palace
They were well
sneered.
aware of how
Make your
talented
move.
Yi Wu was.
If Yi Wu hadn't spent
The
so
leader
much
of
time
this
and
group of
energy to
people
fuse
was
with
not
the
from the
forbidden
heavenly
power,
human
his
tribe.
cultivation level would have
Instead,
been higher
it was
than
an
the
elder
third level
from the
divine
angel
master
tribe.
realm.
The
Such
reason
a
for
powerful
that was
person
because
had
the old
actually
man
been
from the
defeated
angel
by
clan
Lu Ming,
was a divine
first layer
master.
divine
The
master.
angel elder
This
gave the
shattered
order,
their
and a
understanding
group
of
of
the
people
world.
immediately attacked.
The members of the heavenly
Dazzling
human
rays
tribe
of
were
light
shocked,
slashed
while
forward.
Xian Yanqing,
Rumble.
the myriad god
The
tribe,
sky shook
and the others
violently
were
as
overjoyed.
runes spread out,
Boom.
blocking
Lu
the
Ming
attacks.
made his move.
However,
He
in doing
wielded
so,
the obsidian
the
staff
island would
and
also
attacked
be
the
revealed.
heavenly human tribe's
On the
9
island,
heavens
there
battle
was a group of
formation.
elves.
At that
When the
moment,
mysterious
their
ice staff
faces
entered
changed
the range
drastically.
of Xian Yanqing
They
and
looked
Dark Knight
desperate.
Rose's combined
They
attack.
found us.
It did not
The
affect him
people
at all.
from the heavenly
Of
palace
course,
are here.
this was controlled
We won't
by
be
Xian
able to
Yanqing
escape.
and Dark Knight
The
Rose.
elves are doomed.
Then, the
Many
mysterious
people
ice
shouted
staff
in despair,
crashed into the
heavenly
anger
human
and
tribe
grief.
monarch formed by
Rumble.
the 9 heavens
The formations
battle
around
formation.
the island were
With a
torn
loud
apart.
boom,
The
the
heavenly
heavenly
human
human
tribe
tribe
monarch's body
bodies
shook violently.
Some of the heavenly
light
human
on his
tribe
body
members
dimmed.
stood in the sky
Xian
and looked
Yanqing
at the
and
elves
Dark
on the
Knight
island
Rose
with
took
mocking
mocking
expressions
and attacked
the
the
more
heavenly
desperate
human
the
tribe
elves
monarch.
were, the more
The light
excited
on the
they
heavenly
were.
human tribe
Die.
monarch grew
Shouted
dimmer
a
and
heavenly
dimmer,
human
as if he
tribe
would
member.
collapse at any
He
moment.
took the lead and
Steady,
charged towards
steady.
the island.
You must steady
That
yourself.
person had the
Attack
cultivation
with all your
of the
might.
9th great
Charge
supreme
toward
god
the
layer.
east. Whoosh.
The 2/3
On the
level
island,
divine master
an arrow
heavenly
flew
humans
towards the
roared.
heavenly human
The combat
cultivator
strength
of the 9th
Lu
great
Ming
supreme
and the
god
others
layer
had exceeded
the
their
heavenly human
expectations.
tribe member
Now,
was surprised.
they could only rely
He slashed
on the
with
9
his
heavens
sword
battle
and hit
formation.
the arrow.
Without
With a
the
clang,
9 heavens
the
battle
heavenly human
formation,
tribe members'
they were no
bodies
match
shook
for Lu Ming
violently
and
and
the
he couldn't
others.
help but retreat.
They would be crushed
A divine
mercilessly.
weapon.
All
The
the
heavenly
heavenly
human
human
tribe
tribe
member
members
of the
roared
9th great
angrily.
supreme god
They
layer
burned the
whispered.
power of heaven
His
and
eyes were
activated
cold.
the 9 heavens
Down
battle
below,
formation
an old
with all
elf
their
was
might.
holding a handful
The
of
light
emerald
on the
green
heavenly
arrows.
human tribe
That
monarch
old elf
brightened
also
again.
had the cultivation of the
At
9th
this
great
time,
supreme
Lu
god
Ming
layer.
attacked again.
He had just
The
used a
mysterious
divine
ice
weapon to
staff
shoot
struck
the
down,
heavenly human
causing
tribe
the
member
heavenly
of the
human
9th
tribe
great
monarch
supreme
to
god
tremble
layer
violently.
Let's
Among
attack
them,
together
the 9th
and
level
kill him.
divine gods
The divine
trembled
weapon
violently
is ours.
and some even spat
Shouted
out blood.
another heavenly
They had to
human
defend
tribe
against
member.
Xian Yanqing
All right,
and Dark Knight
let's
Rose's
attack together.
combined attack.
There
and
were a
Lu
few
Ming's
heavenly
attack at the
human
same
tribe
time.
members on the
It was
scene.
too difficult.
They were all
At the
cultivators
same
of the
time,
9th great
WN
supreme
Shen,
god layer.
Autumn Moon,
Their
Di
silhouettes
Jenny,
flickered
and the
they
others also
charged
attacked
towards
the
the
9
island.
heavens battle
Come
formation
and
with
help
all their
me.
might.
On the island,
Although their
the
combat
elder
strength
of the
was
elf
not as
clan
strong as
roared.
Lu Ming's,
Another
they
dozen
still
or
brought
so
great
elf
pressure
tribe
to the
elites
heavenly
gathered
human
behind
tribe.
the old man.
Boom.
Behind
Boom.
them, large
Lu Ming
trees
did
appeared,
not speak,
and boundless
he
energy
only
surged
activated
into
the
the
old
mysterious
man's body,
ice staff and
shouted
attacked
the
the
old
continuously.
elf.
The
Then,
heavenly
he
human
drew his
tribe
bow
members
again.
burned the power of heaven
BZZZ,
and fought with all their might.
BZZZ.
However,
BZZZ.
their power of heaven
This
was
time,
limited.
he drew his bow 3
Especially
times
the
in a
9th
row.
level divine
3
gods
arrows
of the heavenly
streaked across
human
the
tribe.
sky and shot
They could
towards
not even
the 3
withstand
strong
the
cultivators
rebounding
of the
power.
heavenly human
Their
tribe.
faces were
The
pale
arrows
and
blood
blood
was
through the
seeping
air.
out of the
Their
corners
might
of their
extremely
mouths.
astonishing.
The power in
Even
their
though
bodies
the 3
was getting
celestial
weaker
race
and
experts
weaker.
tried their best
Break.
to block them,
Lu Ming
they
let
still
out a
couldn't
long
block
cry
them.
and made a
Their
move
bodies
with all
flew
his might.
backwards.
At
And
the
one of the
same
divine
time,
emperors
Xian
was
Yanqing
almost
and Dark
penetrated.
Knight Rose
He
also
was so
used all their
shocked that he
strength
broke
to
out in
maximize
cold
the power
sweat.
of their combined attack. Boom.
This time,
The weaker
the
ones
huge
didn't
body
dare
of the
to
heavenly
attack.
human king
They
that
were
was
afraid
formed by
that
the
they would be
heavenly
shot
human
to
king
death.
directly
Back
exploded.
off.
I'll do it,
Many
said
cultivators
the old
of the
elf
9th
of
great
the heavenly
supreme
human
god layer
tribe at
gave
that
horrible
moment.
shrieks.
He had been
Their
watching
bodies
coldly
exploded
and hadn't
and
done
they
anything
died.
before.
There were close
After
to
all,
200
he was a
9th layer
divine
god God Emperor experts
if the
of the
others
heavenly
could handle
human
it,
clan, he wouldn't have done
50
anything.
of them had died.
However, the others had been
The
stopped
others
by
were
the arrows,
also injured,
so he had no
the 9
choice but to
heavens
do
battle
something.
formation had
Thank
been
you,
broken.
Master Eugene.
However,
At
said
this
a
moment,
heavenly human
Xian
tribe
Yanqing
member
and Dark
politely.
Knight Rose
Whoosh.
also trembled.
The old elf
Blood
of the
flowed
heavenly
out of their
human
mouths
tribe,
as they
Eugene,
staggered backward.
took a step forward.
The two of them had
Holy
been
light
using their
filled the
combined
air.
attack with
10
all their
angelic
strength.
wings spread out
After
from his
persisting
back,
for
and a
so
vast
long,
amount of
they had
energy
reached
pressed
the
down
end of
on
their
the
rope.
island.
The
On
energy
the island,
in their bodies
the expressions
was about
of
to
all
be
the elves
exhausted.
changed drastically,
With the disappearance of the
revealing
joint
deep
attack.
despair.
The heavenly
Divine
human
Master,
seemed to have
the
seen a
elder
glimmer
from the
of
elf
hope.
clan, cried
Run,
out in despair.
spread out.
A divine
Many
master
heavenly
was here.
humans roared.
Even if they had
The
a master
remaining
divine
150
weapon,
to
it was
60
useless.
heavenly human tribe
Elves,
powerful
I'll give you a
beings fled
chance.
in all directions.
Kill yourselves.
You want
Eugene
to leave?
put his hands behind
Stay.
his back and said
Stop them.
arrogantly.
The 10,000
However,
deities,
before he could
Autumn
finish his
Moon,
sentence,
and the others
his
shouted as
expression
they
changed
chased after the
drastically.
heavenly humans.
He jumped up
Try
as if
to
his
keep
butt
them
was
alive.
on fire.
I have
A
something to
spear light
ask them.
suddenly shot
Lu
out
Ming
from the
said
sea
to the
below him.
10,000 deities
It was
and
aimed
the
at
others.
him.
His
He
body
jumped
did
up
not
quickly,
stop as he
but the
charged
spear
at the
light was even
2/3 layer
faster.
divine masters.
Poof!
The
Eugene
2/3
was
layer
pierced.
divine masters
His eyes were
as they
wide
fled
open.
in 2 different
They
directions.
were filled with resentment and fear.
None of you can
Then,
escape
with
from
a
me.
bang,
His
Lu
body
Ming
exploded
snorted.
as he threw the
He was
obsidian
destroyed
staff
in
at
both
one of
body
the
and
3rd layer
soul.
divine masters.
Everyone else was
The
stunned.
obsidian staff tore
Eugene
through
was
the
a divine
void with
master.
incredible speed.
Although he was
It
only a
caught up to
first
the
level
3rd layer
divine master,
he was
in an
still a
instant
divine
and
master.
swung it at his body.
He was unexpectedly
Now that Lu
killed
Ming
by
had
a spear light
activated
in
the
the
battling
sea.
incantation,
Oh no,
his combat
run,
strength
after
had
a few
increased
breaths,
by 8 times.
The remaining people of
His
the heavenly
strength was at
palace
its
came to their
peak,
senses.
and he was able to fight
They
Yi
shouted
Wu.
in horror
The
and
third-tier
tried to
divine
escape.
master,
A
Heavenly
divine
Human,
master
was
was
unable
killed
to
instantly.
withstand the blow.
Wouldn't they
He
be
was sent
courting
flying
death
by
if
the
they
cudgel
stayed?
and smashed
However,
into the ground in
it
the
was
distance.
too late.
His body
Swoosh,
was severely
swoosh,
damaged by the
swoosh,
powerful force,
under the
and
surface
he was
of the
sealed
sea,
in ice by a
numerous
gust
spear
of cold
lights
energy.
flew out.
As for
Top
Lu Ming
point.
himself, he had caught up with another third-level divine master expert.
End of this chapter.
4507. At the bottom of the sea, the spear
Chapter
radiance shot out and pierced through the
Lu
remaining
Ming
experts
caught up
of
with
the
the other
heavenly
third-tier
palace,
divine
killing
master
them all.
expert,
and
this,
directly
on
used
the
the
island,
heaven-breaking
the
move,
elves were a
piercing
little
through the
stunned.
person's
Why
dantian
was there
and
a
crippling
spear
his
radiance
cultivation.
at the bottom of
The
the sea?
two third-level
It was
divine
so
master
powerful
realm
that even the
experts from the
divine
heavenly
master
human
of the
tribe
angel
were
race
killed
was
instantly
killed by
it. They couldn't
Such
resist
power
Lu
was
Ming's attack
absolutely
at all.
shocking.
Not
Could
far
there be
away,
a divine
Anya
master
Rose,
of the elf
Di
race
Jenny,
alive at
Ling
the bottom
Heng,
of the sea?
and the others saw this,
Splash.
and their faces
At
were
this
solemn.
moment,
Their
the sea
eyes were
churned
filled
and a
with
figure
shock
rushed
and
out.
disbelief. This
Lu
figure
Ming's
was naturally
natural
Lu
power
Ming.
is getting more and
However,
more terrifying.
he didn't transform
No one
into
can
his
stop
original
him.
appearance.
If Yi
He
Choshian
still
can't
looked
catch
like
up,
a middle-aged
he will be
man.
left behind.
It's not the elf
It's the
race.
sorrow of
When
other
the elves on
geniuses
the
to
island
be
saw
born
Lu
in the
Ming,
same era
they showed
as
a
him.
hint of
Ling
disappointment.
Heng sighed.
At
He was
first,
originally
they were
the number
hoping that
one
it would
on
be
the
a divine
universe
master
genius
of
list,
the elf race who
overlooking
survived,
countless
but they didn't
geniuses in the
expect it to be a
universe.
human. Not
However,
many of the
they
previous
quickly
number
suppressed
one
the
on the
strange
universe
feeling in their
genius
hearts
list
and
were as
flew
powerful
toward Lu
as
Ming.
him. Led
He
by
used
the
to be
elder from the
confident
elf
that he
race,
wouldn't be
they
afraid
bowed
even if it was
respectfully
the
and
heavenly
said,
human
"You are
tribe's
young of the
heavenly
elf
princess.
race. Thank you
In
for
the
your
history
help,
of the universe,
senior. How
you're
many
welcome.
people could fight
I'm
against the
friends
heavenly
with your
sons
elf
and
king.
heavenly daughters?"
When I heard that
he
the
was
heavenly
high-spirited
palace was going
and
to
thought
deal with
that
the
there were
elf
only a
race,
handful
I
of people
immediately
in the
rushed
universe
over.
who could match
I
him.
didn't expect
He could
that I
only
would
look
still
for them
be a
in the
step too
heavenly
late.
human tribe.
Lu Ming said.
However, the
After
battle
that,
in
he
Taishan
sighed
Immortal
deeply.
City had a
Who are
huge
young
impact
and the
on him.
others were very
Lu Ming,
touched.
Xian
It was
Yanqing,
rare to
Anya
have such a
Rose,
friend.
WN Shen,
Even if the
one
enemy
after
was the
another,
heavenly palace,
they weren't from the
he was
heavenly
still
human
fearless,
tribe,
but
but
they
rushed over
displayed
to help.
terrifying strength.
He even killed
All of
many
them were
experts
stronger
of the
and
heavenly
more
palace
powerful
on
than
the
him.
spot.
In
If
addition,
it were others,
Di Jenny,
they would have
Yin
fled
Zhouling,
after hearing that
Autumn
the
Moon,
enemy was the
Bubbles,
heavenly palace,
and the others were all
How could they
outstanding
save them?
geniuses in the universe.
They were too loyal.
They weren't
Who
any
are
weaker
young
than
was
him.
a little choked
This
up.
made him realize
He continued
that he
to
had been a
clasp his
frog in a
fists
well.
and said,
That
"This
was why he
junior
joined
thanked
Dark
Dark
Knight
Knight
on
Rose
behalf
in
of
the
His
end,
Majesty.
all for the sake of becoming
Unfortunately,
stronger."
now that he
At
saw
this
Lu
point,
Ming's
Hua
fighting
Yang's
power,
face was
he
pale
felt a
and he
sense of
couldn't continue.
helplessness. By the
How
way,
could he catch
how
up
is
with
brother
such a
Hua
freak?
Shaw now?
How could he
Lu Ming
surpass him?
asked deliberately.
Crack.
His
Majesty
Majesty
clenched his
His
fists,
Majesty
and his
has
face
been
was
killed
filled
by
with
the heavenly
unwillingness.
human race.
Lu Ming's
Hua
rise
Yang
is
said with
unstoppable.
grief and indignation.
Don't offend him in the
Damn
future.
it, I'm still
Now,
too late.
let's leave
By the
quickly.
way, where's
This place
Misty
has
now?
nothing to do with
Lu
us.
Ming asked.
Dark Knight
This
Rose's
was his
voice
goal,
rang in
to
Di
find out
Jenny,
the whereabouts of Ling
Yin
Yue,
Zhouling, and the
the
others'
princess
ears.
should be in
Then,
the elven
their
ancestral
figures
land
flickered
now.
and disappeared.
I don't know
Lu
if she
Ming
has
knew
been
that
found
Dark
by the
Knight
heavenly
Rose and the
palace.
others had left.
I hope
but
nothing
he didn't
bad
stop
happens
them.
to the princess.
After Lu Ming
Hua
suppressed
Yang
the
sighed.
two-third layer
The
divine
elven
master
ancestral
existences,
land.
he didn't stop
Yue
at all.
is indeed
He
fine.
continued to
Lu
attack
Ming
the
was
other members
overjoyed.
of the heavenly
He
human
secretly
race.
scolded himself
With a wave
for
of
being
his hand,
stupid.
the heavenly
The
humans
ancestral
were
land
crushed
of
to
the
the ground
elves
like
was
raindrops,
indeed a very
and
good
they all
place to
spat
hide.
out mouthfuls of
Back
blood.
then, when However,
he and Ling Yue
Lu
had
Ming didn't kill
participated in
these
the
holy
holy
seed
humans.
examination.
He still
They had
had
entered the
questions for
ancestral
them.
land of the elves.
Myriad God and
Inside,
Autumn Moon
Lu
joined
Ming had
forces
obtained
to suppress
two
the
holy
heavenly
tree
human
seeds,
tribe
one of
members,
which he had given to the
because
elves,
Xian
and the
Yanqing
other
had
was
lost
still
too
lying
much
in his
power.
storage ring.
He was already powerless to attack.
The ancestral land
However,
of the elf clan
he was still
heavily
able to
guarded
protect
by the
himself.
ancestors of the
A
elf
heavenly
clan.
human tribe
Only
cultivator
the younger
wanted
generation
to take
could
Xian
enter.
Yanqing as a hostage,
The older
but
ones
he was
could not
killed
enter.
by her with a single
Furthermore,
strike.
once they
The other
entered the
members
elf
of the
clan's
heavenly
ancestral
human
land,
tribe could
they would
only
be
give up
heavily
on the
suppressed.
idea.
Their
However,
cultivation
there were
would
too
drop,
many people
and they would
from the
not even
heavenly
be able
human
to
tribe.
use their divine
There were a
weapons.
total of
Ling
150
Yue
to
hiding
60
in the
of them
ancestral
who were
land of
fleeing
the
in all
elves was
directions.
indeed a very good
Lu Ming,
idea.
However, once she was discovered by the experts of the heavenly palace
in the
and
end,
blocked outside,
about 50
it would
heavenly
also
human
be very
tribe members
dangerous.
were suppressed.
Moreover,
They were
the
severely
heavenly palace
injured
might
and
have a
couldn't
way
move.
to break through the
other
restrictions
members
of the
elf
heavenly
clan's
human
ancestral
tribe
land
had fled.
Thinking of
Swoosh.
this, Lu Ming
landed in
somewhat
front of a
anxious.
third-tier divine master elder.
The elven mother
He
planet
grabbed
is
the air
filled
with his
people
hand
from
and
the
grabbed
heavenly
the storage
palace.
ring of the elder.
You have nowhere to hide.
He remembered that this
Why
person
don't you
had
come with
obtained
me?
2 divine
I'll
weapons
take you away.
of the divine hall.
Lu Ming said.
He scanned the storage
Senior,
ring
if
with
you
his
take us
spiritual
away,
consciousness.
the target will be
As
too
expected,
big. I'm
he saw
afraid
2
it will
divine
easily
weapons
attract
in the
the
storage
attention
ring.
of the heavenly
The elder
palace.
looked at Lu
You
Ming
should
in
go
horror.
and save the
He knew
princess.
that since he had
She
fallen
is the
into
hope
Lu
of
Ming's
these
hands,
hands.
his
As
fate
long as
wouldn't
she
be
is still
good.
alive,
Therefore,
the elves will
he
have
didn't
hope
beg
of
for
rising
mercy.
again.
You're a
smart
smart
person.
person.
Don't
Now
worry,
that you've fallen
I have
into
a
my
treasure.
hands,
You
only
can
death
enter my
awaits
treasure
you.
and not be
However,
discovered by
if
the
you
people
honestly
of the
answer
heavenly
a few of
palace.
my questions,
Lu Ming
I can let
said,
you die a
planning
quick
to
death.
put the elves into
Otherwise,
the great desolate
you won't
ring.
be able to die
With a
even
thought,
if you want
a
to.
huge whirlpool
Lu Ming
immediately
coldly,
appeared in the air.
Ask away.
This was opened
If
by
I can
Lu
answer,
Ming,
leading to the
naturally
great
answer.
desolate ring.
If I
You are
can't,
young,
even
and
if
the
I
others
want to die,
hesitated
I
for a
won't
moment.
answer.
Then
The third
flew
layer
toward the
divine
gate.
master said.
With Lu
I
Ming's
won't
cultivation,
answer. The third
if you
layer
wanted to
divine
harm
master
them, he would
expert
not
said.
have to go through
Those
so
who
much
had
trouble.
lived to this age
He could
and reached
easily
this
kill
level
them.
of cultivation
Moreover,
all had
Lu
extremely
Ming
firm
was
wills.
definitely not
All
from the
right,
heavenly palace.
let me ask
If
you,
he was from the
have you
heavenly
seen
palace,
this woman
why would
before?
he kill the
Lu
masters
Ming
of the
took
heavenly
out a jade
palace?
talisman.
Moreover,
The jade
they were
talisman
masters
glowed,
of the
and a
divine
portrait
Lord realm.
appeared in the air.
Was he trying
It
to
was
win
a
their
woman.
trust?
Naturally,
They were far
it was
from
Ling
qualified.
Yue.
In
From
a
the
short
looks of
while,
it,
all
she's
the
from
elves
the
on the
fairy
island
race.
had entered the
This
great
woman
desolate
looks
ring.
familiar.
Lu Ming burned the
she
bodies
seems
of
to
the
be the
masters
fairy
of the
princess.
heavenly palace
The
with
third
fire.
layer divine
Then,
master,
his
heavenly
figure flew
human
and he
muttered.
left.
Lu Ming's
During the
heart
flight,
sank.
Lu
You've
Ming's
seen her
appearance
before.
changed again.
I mean,
in the end,
have you seen
he
her
turned
in
into
the
the
life
appearance
soul
of
heavenly
Eugene,
court?
the first
I've
layer
seen her
divine
portrait
Lord
in
Realm
the dream
Elder
divine
of the Angel
jade,
clan,
but I've never
even
seen
the
her
aura
in the
was
life
exactly
soul
the
heavenly
same.
court.
This
The
was
third
to make
layer
it easier
divine
for him
master
to
shook
move
his head.
around.
You've
Sure
never
enough,
seen her before,
after he turned into
but her
Eugene,
life soul
his
origin
movements
stone
were
fragment
unimpeded.
is in the hands
Even
of the
if he met
celestial
the
race.
people of the heavenly
Lu Ming
palace,
said coldly,
nothing happened.
I've been setting
The other
up a
party
protective
even
array
bowed
to
to him
refine the life
obediently.
soul origin
At the
stone
same time,
fragment.
Lu Ming
Those who
learned
went
of a
to
big
seize
matter
it
from
were
the
first
people
layer
of the
divine
heavenly
masters
palace
and second
the
layer
heavenly
divine
palace
masters,
had already
as well as
discovered
God
the
emperors.
elves' ancestral
If you want
land.
to ask this,
They also
you can
knew
ask
that
them.
the elven
The
princess
third layer
Ling
divine
Yue was
master
hiding in the
Dao of
elves'
existence.
ancestral land
Lu
with a
Ming's
group of young
expression
elves.
was somewhat gloomy.
In the end, he walked
The
up to a
heavenly
second
palace
layer
had
divine
already
master
mobilized a
heavenly
large
human.
number of masters
When Lu
to
Ming
surround
attacked
the entrance
just
of
now,
the elves'
he had
ancestral
specifically
land.
targeted the
Not
divine
good.
masters.
Lu Ming's face was a bit ugly.
Therefore,
the
other than
heavenly
the two
palace
third
had
layer
already
divine
discovered
masters,
it.
there were
It
three
would
other
be
divine
difficult to
masters
save
left
Ling
behind
Yue.
by Lu Ming.
Lu Ming
Have you
immediately
seen her
rushed
in the
toward
life
the
soul's
elves'
heavenly
ancestral
court?
land. Lu Ming
As he
asked,
hurried,
pointing
he thought
at
of a
Ling Yue's
countermeasure.
portrait.
After passing
No.
through the
The
wormhole,
other party
Lu Ming
replied,
soon arrived
No.
near the planet
But
where
her
the
life
entrance
soul
to the
origin
elves'
stone
ancestral land
fragment
was.
is in your hands.
After arriving
Lu
here,
Ming said
Lu Ming's
coldly,
appearance
his
began to
expression
change
dark.
again.
In
So
the
what
end,
if it's in
he
our
turned
hands?
into a young angel.
We killed a group of
After
people
all,
and seized
Eugene
their life
was an
soul origin
existence
stone
of the
divine
fragments,
master
but
realm.
not all of them
His
were
presence
obtained by
was
killing
too
people.
strong.
Two
If
of
he
them
met
were
an acquaintance
ownerless
of
and were
Eugene,
flying around
Lu
this
Ming was
ancient
afraid
city.
of revealing a
We
flaw.
just happened to
If he
bump into
turned
them.
into an
The
ordinary
second
angel
layer
youth,
divine
his
master
presence
heavenly
would be
human
greatly
looked at
reduced.
Lu Ming without
As
any
long as
fear
he
in his
didn't meet
eyes.
an existence of
Ownerless,
the origin realm,
Lu Ming
he
frowned,
shouldn't be exposed.
and then a glimmer of hope
Soon,
appeared in his
Lu
eyes.
Ming arrived at
He
the
remembered
planet where
the
the
abnormality
entrance to the
of the
elves'
life
ancestral
soul
land
origin
was.
stone fragment.
On the planet,
It was
there
the
was a
life
hall.
soul origin
In the
stone
hall
fragment
was the
that had
entrance
flown
to the
in this
elves'
direction.
ancestral land.
He had come here
At this
to pursue
moment,
it.
the hall
If
was
he had other
surrounded.
matters to
They
attend
were
to
all
and didn't have the
experts and
time to
heavenly
chase
soldiers
after the
and
life
divine
soul origin
generals
stone
of the
fragment,
heavenly palace,
he wouldn't have come
so
here.
powerful.
Could it be that
There's
Ling
an
Yue
existence
was
on
delayed
the
by
level
other
of the
matters
Lord of
and
Heaven?
didn't chase after
Lu
the
Ming
life soul
sensed an
origin stone
extremely
fragment?
terrifying aura
Of course,
in the sky.
this was only
He
Lu
secretly
Ming's
took a
guess.
look and
He
discovered
wasn't
that the
sure.
heavenly human
Next,
powerhouse was
Lu
sitting
Ming asked another heavenly human,
the terrifying
and the
aura
answers he
was
received
exuding
were
from
similar.
this person.
After that,
Lu Ming
had come into
asked more than
contact
10
with people on the
and they
level
all
of the
said
Lord
that they
of
had
Heaven
never
more
seen
than
Ling
once.
Yue.
This
Perhaps
person's
Ling
aura
Yue
wasn't really
weaker
delayed
than
by
those of the
something
Lord of
and
Heaven.
didn't come here.
In addition,
Lu Ming
there were many
pondered,
divine
and a glimmer
master
of
realm
hope appeared in his
scattered
heart.
around.
Lu Ming,
This area
how
had
should
been
we deal with
surrounded
these
so
people?
tightly that
The
not
myriad
even a
God
drop of
asked,
water could trickle
kill.
through.
Lu Ming
Above,
said
the
coldly.
existence on the level of the Lord of Heaven noticed Lu Ming approaching
Chapter
and coldly glanced at
45:01.
him. As
Not
if he
long
didn't
after,
find anything,
Lu Ming and
he
the
looked
other
away,
three
headed toward
Lu
the
Ming
periphery of the
secretly
life
heaved a
spirit
sigh of
heavenly
relief.
court. It
As
seemed
for the
that
heavenly
the other
humans,
party hadn't seen
Wan
through
Shen
him,
took
care of them
peek.
all, including Yi Wu, who was also killed by Wan Shen. The primordial
Chapter
divine spirits and the
45:08.
heavenly human
Lu
tribe
Ming
were
wandered
mortal
around
enemies.
as if nothing had
The
happened,
myriad gods
and then
were
came
born
to
from
the
the
vicinity
essence
of a group of
Qi
heavenly
and
soldiers
spirit of
and
dozens
divine
of primordial
generals.
divine
Brother,
spirits.
how is the
They were born to
situation
hate
now?
the heavenly
Lu
human
Ming
tribe
asked
and
a
would not
heavenly
rest
soldier.
until the heavenly
This
human
heavenly
tribe was
soldier
dead.
was an angel.
Therefore,
He never showed
how
mercy
should I
to the
address
heavenly
you?
human tribe.
Why haven't I seen
After
you
killing
before?
the heavenly
You
humans
look
and
very
taking their
unfamiliar.
storage rings,
The
Lu
angel
Ming and the
race
others
heavenly
prepared
soldier
to leave the
glanced
life
at
spirit
Lu Ming
heavenly
and said,
court. He
After
didn't
all,
really
the
suspect
news
Lu
that
Ming,
some of the heavenly
with his
humans had
cultivation,
escaped would
it was
spread
naturally
quickly.
impossible
It
for
was
him
not
to see
good to
through
stay
the
here
great
for long.
imitation technique.
Anyway,
He
he
just
had gained
felt
a lot
that
from
Lu
this
Ming
trip.
looked unfamiliar
Their
and
cultivation
casually
had
asked,
soared, and they
"My
had
name
broken
is
through to the
Gabriel.
divine master
I've been
realm.
traveling in the
In the
universe
primitive
and
universe,
rarely returned
the
to my
divine
clan.
master realm
Not
was a
long ago,
threshold.
I happened
Only
to
when
travel
one
to the
reached the
territory
divine
of the
master
elf
realm
race.
could one truly
When I
enter
heard
the
that
ranks
the
of
heavenly
top
palace
experts
was
in the
exterminating
universe.
the rebel elf
This
race,
time,
I
they
immediately
could be said
rushed
to have
over to
entered the
help
ranks of
Lu
the top
Ming
experts
explained.
in the universe.
Oh, so that's
Moreover,
how it is.
their greatest
Brother,
gain was the
you
treasures.
are very smart.
Each of them
The
had
angel
obtained
raised
an
heavenly
origin
soldier
divine
laughed
weapon
and didn't doubt
Xian
him.
Yanqing had
Actually,
obtained a
it
silver
was very
mace.
normal.
Autumn
If the
Moon had
heavenly
obtained
palace
a
wanted
soft
to
whip.
exterminate a certain
WAN
rebel
Shin
force,
had
if there
obtained
were
a
people
halberd.
from other races
They were
passing
all the
by,
life
they
spirit
would
heavenly
usually come to
court's
help.
18 guardian
The main
divine
reason
weapons
was that
and
they
were
could
considered the
perform
top
well in
among
front
the
of the
origin
heavenly
divine
palace
weapons
and gain a good
Lu
impression
Ming's
of the
gain
heavenly
was,
palace.
of course,
In
the
fact,
greatest.
Lu Ming
Not
wasn't
only
the
did he
only
break
one who would
through,
do this,
but he also
many
comprehended
people
the
would do
second
the
secret
same.
technique of his
This
own,
point was
the primitive
flawless.
style.
Let me
In
tell
addition,
you,
this
he
is
had
a
obtained
certain
the
ancestral
primitive
land
land of the
the
elf
treasure
race.
of the life
The
spirit
elf
heavenly
princess
court.
Ling Yue
He
and
had
a group
also
of elf
obtained
race
5
geniuses
of the
are
palace
in the
guardian
ancestral
divine
land.
weapons.
The angel
Yes,
race
5
heavenly
of them.
soldier said.
4 of them
The
were
elf
snatched
princess
from the
is
2
inside.
third-level divine masters
Then why don't
of
we
the
just
heavenly
kill our way
humans.
in and take
The
her
2
down?
third-level
Lu
divine
Ming
masters
asked,
of the
despite
heavenly
knowing
humans
the answer.
had each
You
obtained
don't
one
know
of the
about
12
this,
palace
right?
guardian divine weapons
This ancestral
when they first
land of
fought
the
over
elf
them.
race has
Later,
layers of
the 2
restrictions
extra
set up by
weapons
the
were also
ancestors
taken
of the
by
elf
the
race.
2 of them after
Only
Yi
the
Wu
younger
made a move.
generation can
In
enter.
the end,
If
Lu
the
Ming
older
benefited
generation
from all of
forcefully
them.
barges in,
Lu Ming
they
had
will be
also
attacked
taken them
by
out
the
and
restrictions.
planned to share them with Xian
Previously,
Yanqing.
Lord
WAN
Shen
Shen
personally
and Autumn
barged
Moon.
in,
But
however,
he was unable to
the
enter.
3 of them shook
The
their
angel
heads.
race
They
heavenly
had
soldier
obtained one,
lowered his
which
voice.
was more than enough.
Even the Lord of
They were
Heaven
all
can't
attack
enter.
type soul-grade
Lu
divine
Ming was a
weapons.
little surprised.
One was enough.
He was really
and more
surprised
wouldn't be
that
of
the
much
restrictions
use.
in the
They
ancestral
didn't
land
have
of the
enough
elves
energy
were
to
so
activate
strong
them,
that even an
so they left
existence
them
like
with
the
Lu
Lord
Ming
of
for the
Heaven
time
would find
being.
it difficult to
Apart
enter.
from these gains,
Yes, Lu Ming
according
also
to Sir
obtained
Lord
quite
God's
a number
judgment,
of broken
there
divine
was a
weapons
reciprocity
which could be
expert
used as
among the
Chocho's
ancestors of
rations.
the elves.
This trip
The
could be
restriction
said
was
to be a
cast
great
down
harvest
by a reciprocity
However,
expert.
Lu Ming was
Only
worried about
reciprocity
Ling Yue's
experts
safety.
can break through it.
The
It was
angels
not
heavenly
difficult
soldier
for them
asked.
to return.
Then,
They had
what do you all
memorized
plan
Chu
to do
Yi's map
next?
before.
Lu Ming
According to
continued
Chu Yi's
asking,
map,
they
I
would
don't
not
know
lose
yet.
their way.
I
In
heard
addition,
that they are waiting
there was no
for the
danger,
other Lord
so they were
Heaven.
very fast.
When that Lord
It didn't
Heaven
take long
arrives,
for them to
we
leave
will
the life
discuss
spirit heavenly
countermeasures.
court and
For
enter
now,
the thick fog.
we just have to wait.
A few days later,
the heavenly
they
soldier
left the fog
from the
and
angel
headed
race
towards
said,
the heaven destroyer. The life spirit
Lu
heavenly
Ming
court
nodded,
was
but he
originally in the
secretly
ruins of
heaved
the
a sigh
universe,
of relief.
so it wasn't
The
too far
people from
away
the
from the
heavenly
heaven
palace
destroyer.
had yet to attack
After some
the elven
time, they
ancestral
returned
land.
to the heaven
This
destroyer.
meant that Ling
As soon
Yue
as they
and the
returned
others
to
were
the
still
heaven
fine.
destroyer,
Lu
however,
Ming and
there
the
were so
others
many
immediately
experts
went to
here
look
that
for
Lu
Fei
Ming
Huang.
naturally couldn't
Lu
make
Ming
any
had
moves.
2 main
He
purposes
could only
for
stay
looking for
here
Fei
and
Huang.
observe the situation.
Firstly, regarding
An hour
Ling
later,
Yue,
he wanted to
suddenly,
ask Fei
Lu
Huang
Ming
to
raised
use his
some
head
resources
and look
to
at a spot
investigate
in the
Ling
void.
Yue's safety.
The void trembled
Secondly,
violently.
it was about the
rippling
life
like
spirit.
water.
The
Then,
master
a
of the
figure
life
appeared
spirit
out of
heavenly
thin air.
court was not
The Lord
dead.
of Heaven.
The taboo
Lu
power
Ming
had fused
understood
into
that
one
the Lord
and
of
was
Heaven
reborn.
that everyone had
This
been
was a
waiting
big
for had
deal.
finally arrived.
For someone like the master
Greetings,
of the life
Lord
spirit
of
heavenly
Heaven.
court,
Many
once he
experts
recovered
from
to
the
his
heavenly
peak,
palace
he had the
bowed
ability
to the Lord
to
of
overturn
Heaven.
the universe.
The Lord of Heaven
He had to
nodded
inform
and stepped
Fei Huang
forward.
and the others as
Yaichu
soon
of
as
Beach.
possible so
What's
that they
the
could prepare
situation now?
countermeasures.
The
It
Yaichu
would
of
be
Beach
best
he
to pull
spoke
the
of
other
was the
party
Lord of
into their
Heaven who had
camp.
been here at
However,
the beginning. Before they
there is a
arrived at the
restriction
place
set up by an reciprocity and exclusion
here.
They met an
Only
old
young
acquaintance.
people can enter.
Yiling.
The older
It
ones
seems like
can't
you
enter,
guys have made
so
a
I'm
wasted
waiting for
trip
you
to
looking
discuss
for Senior
countermeasures.
Fei Huang.
Senior Fei
Huang
has
something
a
to do
restriction
and left.
set up by a
Yiling
reciprocity
said.
expert.
Senior Fei
The Lord
Huang
of Heaven
left.
behind him
Lu Ming
frowned.
was stunned.
This person
That's
was called
right.
Yelling Flight.
It's because
and
of
he
a
was
big
also
matter
an
that has
extremely
something to
powerful
do
Lord
with
of
you.
Heaven. I've been
That's
looking for
right.
you for a long
The
time,
restriction
but
is
you haven't been
extremely
around
powerful.
during this period
It's
of time.
probably not
Yiling
cast
said.
down by a
It
single
has something to
reciprocity
do with me.
expert. What
It's
is it?
probably been
Lu
constantly
Ming was
reinforced
stunned.
by
He
several
had a bad
reciprocity
feeling in his
experts
heart.
over many generations.
It's about the space-time
We can't
spirit
break
rats
through
and
it
the
with our
world's
turtle
strength.
clan. If we
The
try to
Heavenly
break through
Palace
it
has made a
forcefully,
move
we'll
against
be in
these
danger.
two clans.
Yaichu
They
of
want to
Beach
destroy
said,
the two clans
the Lord
or
of
leave
Heaven
a part
was
of
known
them
to
behind
stand
at
at
the
the peak of the
control the
divine
two
Lord
clans.
realm. However, said,
no matter how
"What?
great the peak was,
Lu Ming,
he was still a
Xian
divine
Yanqing,
lord.
WAN
There was a
Shen,
huge
and
gap
Qiu
between
were all
him and the
shocked.
reciprocity
Lu
realm.
Ming was even more
Reciprocity
shocked.
experts
The Heavenly
controlled
Palace
Origin
dared to
and
make a move
existed
against
against
the
the World
universe.
Turtle Clan
They were
and
not
the
space-time
space-time
spirit
spirit that
rats.
divine lords
It
could
must
resist.
be because of him.
Even after
In the
countless
Grand
years,
Supreme
a
Immortal
restriction
City,
set up by
Bubbles
an
and
reciprocity
Dandan
expert
had helped
was
him
still
deal with the
terrifying.
heavenly human race.
It was not something
He
that
did not
divine
expect
lords
the
could
heavenly
touch.
human race
Not
to be
to
so
mention
ruthless
the
and
restriction
decisive.
in the elven
They
ancestral
actually
land
wanted to
had been
destroy the two
reinforced by
clans.
several generations
Also,
of reciprocity
how were Bubbles
experts,
and Dandan?
making it even
Lu
more
Ming
terrifying.
was extremely worried.
Then do you have a countermeasure? You don't have to
Yelling
worry
Flight
too
asked.
much. The
What I
space-time
mean
is to
spirit
report
rats
the
and the World
situation
Turtle
to a
Clan
celestial
seemed to have
venerable
guessed
and
that they would
ask a
be in big
celestial
trouble,
venerable to
so they
break the
contacted us in
restriction.
advance
Yaichu
and wanted to
of
join
Beach
forces
said,
with us.
No.
Yiling
If
said,
we have to trouble a celestial venerable
the
to deal with a
space-time
mere
spirit
elven
rats
race
and the World
will
Turtle
lose
Clan
face.
want to join
Yelling
forces
Flight
with the
shook
Heaven
his
Destroyer.
head. I had
Lu
no
Ming's
choice
heart
but to
skipped
do
a
so.
beat.
This
Yaichu
was
of
beyond
Beach
his
sighed.
expectations.
The elven race
That's
was
right.
only ranked
In
33rd
fact,
on the
you don't
primitive
know.
race ranking.
The
There
space-time
were no
spirit rats
reciprocity
have long
experts
wanted to
now,
join forces
so the
with
Heavenly
us,
Palace
but they
did
haven't
not
made
send
a
up their
celestial
minds.
venerable to
This
deal with
time,
the elven
we
race.
forced them to make
Moreover,
a decision.
Celestial
After receiving the
venerables
news
had
from the
celestial
two clans,
venerables to do.
Senior Fei Huang and the others went to support the
If
two
they
clans
troubled a
as they
celestial
retreated to the
venerable
universe
because of the
ruins.
elven race,
With many
then
senior
they, the Lord of
experts
Heaven,
supporting
would
them,
lose
I
face.
think the two clans
Isn't
will be
the elven
fine.
ancestral
Yiling
land
said.
only accessible
Hearing
to the
this,
younger
Lu
generation?
Ming breathed a
Then
sigh
we'll
of
just
relief.
send young
The
experts
two clans
in
were
and
one
kill the
step ahead of
remaining
time
elves.
and passed the
Yelling
news to
Flight
the Heaven
said,
Destroyer.
That's right.
With Fei Huang
Why
and the
didn't
others
I think of
supporting
this?
them, they should
I
be
was
fine
mistaken
and could
before
safely
and wanted
retreat
to break
to
the
the
restriction,
ruins.
but I didn't
This
think
was
that I
even
could kill
better.
the remaining
Now,
elves without
Lu
breaking
Ming
the
and
restriction.
the Heavenly Palace
Yaichu
were
of
on
Beach
opposite
was
sides.
overjoyed. They would
It
not
wasn't that
rest
he was
until
stupid,
one of them
but
was
that
dead.
he had been too
As for
focused on
Dandan,
breaking the
his
restriction,
relationship with
so he didn't
Bubbles
think
had
about
always
it.
been a big rock
However,
in his heart.
that Ling Yue
He was
is
afraid that
extremely
the Heavenly
strong.
Palace would
When
deal
she was
with
in the
Dandan
Grand
and
Supreme
Bubbles
Immortal
because of
City,
him.
she
Now that
displayed
the two
11
clans
stars
had joined
of
forces
forces
with the Heaven
comparable
Destroyer
to the
and
Heavenly
arrived at
Daughter
the
of
universe
Heaven.
ruins,
If we
they
want
did
to
not
kill
have
her,
to be
we
afraid
have
that
to
the
send
Heavenly
out the
Human
Heavenly
race would
Daughter
deal
of
with
Heaven.
Bubbles and Dandan.
Yelling Flight
Lu
said,
Ming,
"That's
you guys
easy.
can wait here
After
with
the
peace of
battle in
mind.
the Grand
I
Supreme
believe
Immortal
that
City,
it won't be long
Yichu
before
Senior
Senior
Fei
went into
Huang
seclusion
and the
to
others
break
return.
through to the Divine
Yiling
Master
said,
Realm.
Not long
Millimeter,
ago,
Lu
he
Ming
broke
nodded
through to the Divine
then,
Master
Lu
Realm.
Ming, I'll
Xian
send him a
Yanqing,
sound
Autumn
transmission
Moon,
and
ask
ask
him
him
to
to
come.
come. Return
With
to
him
their
around,
residence.
Ling
The
Yue
four
will
of them took
definitely
out their
die.
god weapons
Yaichu
and
of
began
Beach
to refine
smiled
them.
faintly.
Without refining
Yichu
them,
Tianji
it
broke
was difficult
through
to
the Divine
control
Master
and exert
Realm.
their power.
Haha,
Lu
that's
Ming
great.
also took out
With him
his long
around,
spear.
nothing will
The
go
long
wrong.
spear was golden
Yelling
as
Flight
if it was
laughed out
cast from
loud.
gold.
Yichu
Lu Ming
Tianji
played
was
with
known
it
as
for
the
a while
strongest
and
son
showed
of
a
heaven
satisfied
before the
look.
battle for the
He
origin
still
seed
preferred
in the
the
Grand
spear
Supreme
type of
Immortal
weapon.
City.
It was
He
time for the
possessed
ice
12
mystic
stars
rod
of battle
battle
strength,
strength, which was rare even in the
Lu Ming
history
began
of the
to
heavenly
refine
human
it.
race.
With Lu
Now
Ming's
that he had
current
successfully
cultivation,
broken
it
through
was
to
not
the Divine
difficult to
Master
refine
Realm,
the long
his
spear.
battle strength
Soon
was even
after,
more
it
terrifying.
was refined
With
by
him
Lu Ming.
entering the elven ancestral land, Ling Yue would not be able to escape.
Chapter
With
4502,
Yichu Tianji and
War
some other
God
young
Spear.
experts,
After
enough to
refining
kill
the
the
golden
remaining
spear,
elves, a name
Yaichu of
automatically
Beach
appeared in
and
Lu
then
Ming's
sent a
mind.
sound transmission
It was
through
the
the
name
dream
of
Divine
Divine
Jade.
Jade.
Swoosh,
The conversation
swoosh.
between the two Lord
Lu
of
Ming
Heaven
held the
was not
spear in his
hidden,
hand and
everyone
stabbed it a few
present
times,
heard it, piercing a
Yichu
few pitch black
Tianji,
holes in the
Lu
space.
Ming's eyes flashed
However,
with a cold light.
Lu Ming had
Peak.
excellent control of his power. The space was pierced, but there wasn't much movement.
Chapter
Soon,
4509.
the pitch black holes in the space
Lu Ming
automatically
was surprised
healed
that
and
Yichu
disappeared.
Tianji had broken
Then,
through
with
to
a
the Divine
thought,
Master
the War
Realm
God
so
Spear
quickly.
turned into a
He,
ray of light
Xian
and flew
Yanqing,
into Lu
and the
Ming's
others
sea
were
of
only able to
consciousness.
break through
The
to the
next
Divine
moment,
Master
a
Realm
ring
because of the
appeared
Life
in Lu
Spirit
Ming's
and the
hand.
Divine
The
Creation
Great
Array.
Desolation
In reality,
Ring.
Lu
Only a
Ming's
few
eyes
years
shone
had passed
brightly.
in the outside
This
world,
was one of the 4
but thinking
supreme
about
treasures
it,
of the
it was
Heavenly
normal.
Court.
Before entering the
mysterious would it
Supreme
be if it was above the 18 divine cultivation was already very high, began to refine reaching the peak of the 6th layer of the Emperor God realm. Stopped refining. After entering the supreme was a little surprised. He quickly reached the peak of the 9th layer of the Emperor God realm. It's many times harder than the divine period of accumulation. Looming muttered, he was almost able to break through to the divine master realm. The harder it was to refine, after the end of the origin battle, the great desolation returned to the heavenly palace. With the resources of the heavenly palace and the forbidden power was constantly injected into the great desolation ring. What should we do?
A few more days
was
passed,
deeply
and
worried.
Lu Ming finally
If Ling
refined
Yue
the great
didn't have any
desolation
heaven-defying
ring.
opportunities,
Lu Ming quickly
her
probed
cultivation
with his
would
spirit
most likely
sense.
still be
The
at the
next
ninth
moment,
layer of the
Lu
Emperor
Ming
God
appeared
realm.
on a boundless
If she met
continent.
Yechu Tianji,
This is,
who had already
Lu Ming
stepped into the
opened his
divine
eyes
master
wide.
realm,
This
she
would
would naturally
definitely
be no
formed by
match
his
for him.
spirit sense.
When Yechu
But there was no
Tianji and
difference
the others
between his
enter,
senses
I will
and his
also
body.
think of a way
What
to
entered
enter.
his eyes
I
was a
hope they can
boundless
choose me.
continent. Lu Ming
There was
thought
actually
to
a
himself,
continent inside
Lu
the
Ming
great
and the others
desolation
didn't
ring.
wait for long.
This continent
About
exuded
7 days
an
later,
unbelievable
ripples
aura.
appeared in the void
Ancient,
as a group
grand,
of people broke
vast,
through the void
majestic,
and arrived.
heavy.
The person in
Lu
the
Ming
lead
felt
was
that it was
wearing
difficult to
golden
find
battle
words
armor.
to describe
His
this
long
continent.
golden hair fluttered in the
Moreover,
wind,
the aura
and his
that this
body
continent
emitted a
gave him
brilliant
was
aura.
very similar to the
This
universe
person
ruins
was
and the
Yechu Tianji.
Taishang immortal
Behind
city.
him followed
However,
a group of
whether
top
it was the
geniuses
universe
from
ruins
various
or
races,
the Grand Supreme
there were
Immortal
celestial
City,
race,
their auras
angel
were not
race,
as strong as
blood
this
race,
continent,
and so on.
Could this be
They
the
were
great
all direct
desolate
disciples
continent?
of some
Lu
important
Ming
figures
suddenly
in the
had a
heavenly
thought.
palace. He was
However,
somewhat flabbergasted.
Yechu Tianji was
At
the
the
only
same
son of
time,
heaven-level
he was
figure.
shocked by his own
In
thoughts.
fact, among the younger
primeval
generation of the
continent
elf
was
race,
hidden in this
Ling
world.
Yue was the only
That's
one who was
impossible.
difficult to deal
Wasn't
with.
the great
The
desolate
others were easy
continent
to deal
destroyed
with.
in the last
With
era?
Yechu Tianji
Lu
in
Ming
charge,
immediately
it was enough.
rejected this idea.
After Yechu
The
Tianji
reason for
arrived,
that was because
bowed
even
to the
though
two
the
Lord of
continent in
Heaven.
the great
All
desolation
right,
ring was
you
enormous
guys can go
and
now.
appeared to be boundless,
Bring out the
there
head
was
of the
actually
elf
a limit
race.
to it.
Yechu
Lu
of
Ming
Beak
had
ordered,
already refined
Lord
the great
of Heaven,
desolation ring.
don't worry.
As the
It
owner
won't
of
be
the
long
great
before I
desolation
can bring
ring,
the head
he
of the
could
elf
clearly
race to
sense the
see
size
you.
of this
Yechu
continent.
Tianji was
The
extremely
area of this
confident,
continent was
as if
very
he had
large,
already recovered
10
from the
times
shock of
larger
the
than the
battle
Dragon
at the
Clan's
supreme
mother
immortal
planet.
city.
However,
Then, it
with
was
Yechu
Yechu
Tianji
Tianji
as
as
the
the
great
lead,
desolate
they set
continent
off
of the
towards the
previous
ancestral
epoch.
land of the elves.
Other
In
than
the
Yechu
previous
Tianji
era,
and the
the
others,
Eldritch
they
continent
didn't call
contained
the
all
others.
the stars and
This
energy
time,
in the
Lu
universe
of Heaven
ruins
God
and the Eldritch
Lord,
universe.
Lord of Heaven,
It was so
Lord of
huge
Heaven,
that it was
wait,
comparable to
Yechu
many Dragon
Yechu
Mother
of Heaven.
planets.
The two
No,
heavenly
it's
lords
not the great
furrowed their
desolate
brows.
continent.
Yechu. Perhaps it was
King
refined
Yechu
from the
said,
fragments of the
Lord,
great
Lord,
desolate continent.
Lord,
Lu Ming
Lord,
guessed in his heart.
Lord,
This ring
Lord,
was called the
Lord,
Great Desolation
Lord
Ring,
of Lord of
which
Heaven.
explained a lot of things. However, everything was just Lu
Lord.
Ming's guess.
Lu Ming
There
said
was no other
respectfully,
information.
How thoughtful
He would
of
have
you.
to ask the
Go
life
on.
spirit of the
Yechu
heavenly
of
court
Beach
in the
waved
future.
his hand casually.
What a rich energy.
He didn't care
Is
about
this
a junior
energy
from
the great
angel
desolation
race.
chi?
Yechu
Lu Ming
Tianji
muttered
was
and
expressionless.
observed carefully.
He didn't
This
care
continent
about Lu
was
Ming at
filled
all.
with rich energy.
In his opinion,
this
Lu
energy
Ming
was
very
very
similar
similar
to
to the
great
great
desolation
desolation
blinded
in
by
the Grand
greed.
Supreme
He had
Immortal
seen
City.
many such people.
On the continent,
it
there
didn't
were
matter
mountains,
if he followed
rivers,
them in,
and ancient
it
trees.
didn't matter if
it
he
was
had
full
one
of
more
vitality.
or one less.
There were even
Thank
many
you,
heavenly
Lord
treasures
of Heaven.
growing in the
Lu
mountains.
Ming pretended to be
Ancient
ecstatic
trees
and
and
then
spirit
joined
herbs
Yechu
were
Tianji
everywhere.
and the others.
However,
Let's
other than
go.
that,
Yechu
Lu Ming
Tianji
didn't see
waved
any
his
other
hand
living
and led
beings.
the others to the
There was
entrance
no
of the
living
elf
being
race's
on this
ancestral
continent,
land.
not even a
They
mosquito.
then entered the entrance
Treasure,
one
it's
after
really
another.
a treasure.
In the next
If
moment,
I cultivate
they
here,
arrived at
my
the first
cultivation
level of the
will
elf
definitely
race's
improve by
ancestral
leaps
land.
and bounds.
Here we are again.
However, it's
I
not
didn't
very
expect
useful
to come
me.
to the elf
Lu Ming
race's
thought.
ancestral land
The
again
great
in this way.
desolation ring was
Lu
definitely
Ming
a
sighed in
rare
his
treasure.
heart.
If
If
we
he
let
no
other
different
people
from
cultivate
the last
here,
time,
their
there was still
cultivation
a
speed
strong
would
definitely
definitely
increase
increase
here.
rapidly.
Similarly,
The manifestation
he could see
realm
stone
was too
towers in
good.
the distance.
It really seemed
stone
like the
towers
great
were
desolation
suppressing some
continent of the
terrifying
previous
evil
spirits.
However,
According to the
that was only
information
for
we
those
received,
below the
there are a
divine
total
master
of
realm.
9 levels
It
in
was
the
not
elf
very
race's
useful for
ancestral
those
land.
above the divine
The elf
master
race
realm.
remnants are
No,
probably
it
in the
might not
last
be
few
useless
levels.
to me.
However,
Suddenly,
we can't
Lu
let
Ming
our
had
guard
a flash
down.
of inspiration.
They might be hiding
the second
in the first
secret
level.
technique that he
Now,
comprehended,
spread out
the great
and search.
desolation style,
Once you
was
find
based
any
on the
news
great
of the elf
desolation
race
continent.
remnants, report
When
to me
executed,
immediately.
it would form
Yechu
a great
Tianji
desolation
said,
continent
yes.
to suppress
Then,
the enemy.
Everyone
However,
spread out and
that
went
great
in all
desolation
directions.
continent was
Lu
only
Ming
Lu
followed
Ming's
the few of
imagination
them and headed to
Hence,
the east.
The great
After
desolation continent that he formed lacked spirituality. The mountains and rivers on it were also blurry. Used his finger as a continent in the Great Desolation Ring was really made from the fragments of the Great Desolation continent to suddenly attack. Lu Ming could use the Great Desolation Ring as a template to continue comprehending the Great Desolation style, and they wouldn't be able to block Lu Ming's attack. The Great Desolation style directly continuously by Lu Ming's finger force. Could this be the reason why the life spirit of the Heavenly Court left the Great Desolation Ring to Lu Ming? At the same time, the life spirit had taken away the other three great treasures of the Heavenly Court. He left the place and headed toward the nearest entrance. To Lu Ming. There were 9 intersections from the first floor to the second. The Great Desolation Ring was completely different from the floating continent with this place in the universe. He easily found the nearest entrance and entered the second floor. Although the floating continent fragments speculated that Lin Yue and the others the Great Desolation continent collapsed, They should
much
be
time
on the
had
last
passed
few
and the
floors,
epochs had
or even the
changed.
10th floor.
They had long decayed
That was the
and
safest
changed.
place.
They had
Back
long
then,
lost the
Lin
charm of
Yue
the great
had
desolation
fused with the energy of the
and had
holy
become
seed
some
mother
dead
tree,
continents.
and her elf bloodline
However,
had become
the continent in the
incomparably
great
powerful.
desolation ring
Later
was like a
on,
miniature
she had
version
absorbed
of
a
the
drop
great
of 5
desolation
elements immortal
continent.
tears.
It
And
was
the strength
alive.
of her elf
Although
bloodline
he did
could be
not
said
know
to have
how the
reached the
life
peak in
spirit
the
of the
history
heavenly
the elf
court
race.
was refined,
The elf
he did not
bloodline
know.
could restrain
Perhaps
the evil
the
spirits
life
in the
spirit
elf
was not
ancestral
refined
land.
by the life spirit of the heavenly court, but obtained by
Lin
him.
Yue could
He
come
did
and
not
go
know
as
any
she
of
pleased
this.
in the elf
Not
ancestral
bad,
land.
not bad.
In addition,
This great
Lu Ming had
desolation
told
ring
the elf
is very
clan
useful
about the
to
array
me.
formation
Lu
to
Ming's
refine the
face
evil
lit up
spirit
with joy.
deed.
The
He had
array
family
formation
and
could
friends.
also restrain
In
the
the
evil
past,
spirits,
he had
so
wandered
it wasn't
everywhere.
difficult for Ling
His
Yue
family
and
and
the
friends
others
were
to reach
either
the
in the
last
chaotic
level.
astral river
Therefore,
or in the
Lu
corners
Ming
of the
did not
Taishu
stop
dynasty.
at the first few
They
floors.
did not have a good
Instead,
cultivation
he continued
environment.
to advance
Lu
towards the
Ming
last
had never
few
gone
floors.
back to visit them.
If the people of
mainly
the
to
heavenly
protect
palace
them.
wanted to
The
enter the
Taishu
next
dynasty
floor,
or the
they had to
chaotic
find the
astral
entrance
river
first.
were too remote.
Lu Ming
He
was
did not
familiar
leave
with the
any
road,
clues when he
so
came
his
out.
speed was naturally
The
much
heavenly
faster
palace
than the
might
people
not
of
be
the
able
heavenly
to find
palace.
him.
Second
However,
floor,
once he
third
returned,
floor,
he would
fourth
leave
floor,
behind
soon,
clues that could
Lu
be
Ming
captured
arrived
by
at
the
the
heavenly
seventh floor.
palace.
The suppression
However,
of the seventh
it was
floor
different
was
with the
already
great
very
desolation
strong,
ring.
but it had no
Lu
effect
Ming
on Lu
planned to
Ming.
go back when he
Back
was
then,
free and
the
send his
restrictive
family
power
and
here
friends
had
into
no
the
effect
great
on Lu
desolation
Ming.
ring.
Now,
Then,
Lu Ming's
he would bring
restrictive
them to the
power was
universe
many
ruins.
times stronger than before.
However,
So
Lu
it
Ming
naturally
still
wouldn't
had
have
a
any
question
effect.
in his heart.
After reaching
Was the
the
great
seventh
desolation
floor,
ring
Lu
only
Ming
used
wasn't in
for
a
this?
hurry to go to the
After
eighth
all,
floor.
the great
Instead,
desolation
he
ring was
started
one of
to
the life
investigate
spirits' 4 great
He was
treasures
afraid
of the
that
heavenly
Ling
court.
Yue and the
If
others
it
would
only
miss
had
out
these
on the seventh
functions,
floor.
it felt a
Ga
little
ga
lacking.
ga. A
The
sharp
life
cry
spirit
rang out
was
as a
one of
dark
the 4
cloud
great
flew
treasures
towards Lu
of the
Ming.
heavenly court.
It was an evil
It was the
spirit.
top treasure
A large
in the
group
universe.
of evil spirits
Even the
pounced
origin
towards
realm
Lu Ming.
experts would be jealous and fight
a powerful
over it.
aura
It
erupted
could only
from
be
Lu
used
Ming's
to nurture
body.
existences
This aura,
below the
Lu
divine
Ming used
master
the
realm.
great imitation
It did not
technique
seem
to
to be
imitate
worthy
the aura
of the title
elf
of
royal
4 great
bloodline.
treasures.
When the evil spirits sensed this aura, they were so scared that they ran
Chapter
away.
4503.
In the blink of an eye, not
Legend
a single
had
one
it
was
that the
left.
life spirit was
Lu
one of the
Ming's
4
figure
great treasures
constantly
of the
flickered
heavenly
on the
court.
seventh floor.
It was
After
extremely
searching
useful
the seventh
to
floor,
reciprocity
he did not
cultivators.
find any traces
Even
of Ling Yue
reciprocity
and the others.
cultivators would
After
covet
that,
it and fight
Lu
for
Ming
it with their
arrived
lives.
at the eighth floor.
However,
On the
looking
eighth
at
floor,
the effects
there
of the
was still
chaos
no
ring,
trace of
it
Ling
did not
Yue
seem to
and
be
the
worthy
others.
of being one of the
Soon,
4 great
Lu Ming
treasures.
arrived at the
At the
ninth
very
floor.
least,
You're
tuning
tuning
into
into
the
the Celestial
would
War
not
YouTube
fight
channel
for it,
because it
Don't
was
forget
useless
to
to them.
subscribe and
Those
join
from
us on
large
this journey to
organizations
catch
and
the most
clans would be
captivating
tempted,
stories.
but those lone reciprocity cultivators would not be interested at all. That was why
Although Myriad God also had the ability to open wormholes, it was still inferior to an expert like the spacetime spirit mouse. The Myriad God's ability to open wormholes was inherited from a certain primordial god. He was not very proficient in it, and he was not very good at it to begin with. In the universe, spacetime spirit mice are very useful. I really don't know if the Heavenly Palace has lost their minds. Why would they attack spacetime spirit mice? Myriad God Stow. He might not have lost his mind. It might have been premeditated, Lu Ming said. Oh, what do you mean? Myriad God's eyes flickered. The spacetime spirit mouse race has long intended to join the Heaven Destroyer. Perhaps the Heavenly Palace has already heard some rumors. It's good that the spacetime spirit mice can be used by themselves, but once they join the enemy, it will be a disaster. The Heavenly Palace is probably looking for a reason to get rid of the spacetime spirit mice to prevent future trouble. Lu Ming analyzed. Myriad God and the others nodded. Perhaps this was the reason. Dandan, Bubbles. Suddenly, Lu Ming's eyes lit up as he saw Dandan and Bubbles flying out of the wormhole. Lu Ming finally felt relieved. He was relieved that Dandan and Bubbles were fine. Lu Ming. Big brother Lu Ming. Dandan and Bubbles also noticed Lu Ming and the others and quickly flew over. Lu Ming, something big has happened, Dandan shouted as soon as he arrived. I know that you are being hunted down by the Heavenly Palace. Fortunately, you are fine. Lu Ming smiled. It's not us, it's the elf race, Dandan said. What? The elf race? Lu Ming's heart suddenly trembled. He had a bad premonition. Could it be that the Heavenly Palace also attacked the elf race? We received news that the Heavenly Palace sent an army to kill the elf race. They want to eliminate the elf race from the universe, Dandan said. Lu Ming's expression was extremely ugly. He asked, how is the elf race now? When we received the news, it was already too late. It is said that the elf race's mother planet has been breached. Countless elves have been killed. I'm afraid the destruction of the elf race is inevitable. Dandan sighed. Lu Ming's heart sank. He thought of how he had interrogated the celestial race in the Life Spirit Heavenly Court if he had seen Ling Yue. The people of the celestial race all said that they had not seen Ling Yue. Lu Ming had guessed at that time that perhaps Ling Yue had not gone to the Life Spirit Heavenly Court and had been delayed by something. From the looks of it, it was very likely that it was because of the Heavenly Palace's invasion of the elf race. The Heavenly Palace had attacked the elf race. Even if the Life Spirit Origin Stone fragment had undergone a mutation and flown away by itself, Ling Yue probably wouldn't have the mood to care about it. Then, how was Ling Yue now? Lu Ming took a deep breath, calmed himself down, and asked, do you guys have any news about the elf princess Ling Yue? No, it is said that the star fields where the elf race is located are in complete chaos. There are experts from the Heavenly Palace hunting the elf race everywhere. Fei Huang and some seniors of our two races have already rushed to the elf race. They want to save a portion of the elf race and bring them to the universe ruins. However, it is hard to say how many elves they can save. Dandan said. Dandan, Bubbles, you guys can stay here and have a good rest. I still have things to do, so I won't entertain you guys. With that, Lu Ming turned around and left. Lu Ming, I'll go with you. Young master, wait for me. Xian Yanqing and Autumn Moon called out one after another, following closely behind Lu Ming. They were very clear about Lu Ming's thoughts. They naturally knew that Lu Ming wanted to go to the elf race's star field alone to look for Ling Yue. That's right, Lu Ming. Let's go together so that we can take care of each other. Myriad God also walked over. Big brother Lu Ming, bring me along. Bubbles also flew over. No, you guys can't go. Stay here. Lu Ming's face darkened as he said. Right now, they were all thorns in the eyes of the Heavenly Palace, and the star fields where the elf race was located were filled with experts from the Heavenly Palace. Once they went over and were discovered by the Heavenly Palace, they would definitely be hunted down and killed. It would be extremely dangerous. Lu Ming didn't want Xian Yanqing and the others to take the risk with him. However, he had to make this trip. He had to find Ling Yue, regardless of life or death. He had owed Ling Yue too much. It could be said that a large part of the reason why the elf race had encountered such a calamity was because of him. If it wasn't for the fact that he was pretending to be Ling Yue's fiancé, the elf race wouldn't have been so close to him, and wouldn't have been hated by the celestial race.